my name is Neil Meesh. I'm a firefighter paramedic here in the Denver metro area. I currently reside in Colorado Springs, but I have worked in EMS for approximately 10 to 12 years now. I started in California and I worked in Las Vegas and now Colorado, both 911, wildland, industrial, and then on the fire side, most recently. So lots of
Awesome.
experience in a broad spectrum.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yep.
So, how'd you get into Wildland?
So Wildland came to me when I worked for an agency here in Colorado Springs. We sent out apparatus. We sent out brush trucks and engines to wildland incidents. From there, the organization attempted to start a REMS program, so rapid extrication module. From there, that didn't really take off very well. It took a lot of time, took a lot of money. And so I started to look elsewhere through contract agencies to get online and to get some experience so that when the team finally got off the ground, we were able to move forward with someone on the team with experience in that role. So I ended up working for a handful of contract agencies in the Denver metro, I would say, Denver area, and nationwide, really, and deployed on a handful of incidents. Uh, that being said, from there it kind of just spiraled out of control, I would say. So a lot of opportunity, just like everything in EMS, right? You
Yeah.
jump into something feet first, and next thing you know, you realize you're halfway across the pool. So yeah,
that. Oh my God. So true.
so most recently, I actually just opened up my task book to be a medical unit leader as well. So for those that are interested in doing wildland, they have the potential to probably meet me or be mentored or hopefully help them get online and do a good job for the wildland programs that they have.
Fantastic. So, if somebody wants to get into this, obviously we know you got to have your white patch or your silver patch or your gold patch. So, what else do you need?
Yep. So when it comes to that, when it comes to certifications, national registry is going to be key. It kind of goes a lot deeper than that. So national registry is your start, obviously, getting your patches done, and then from there, getting established at an agency with a good medical direction. For those that are familiar, there's compact states out there that helps you move across state lines a little bit easier. I guess the simplest way to put it is that you come from a compact state. So Colorado, for instance, a great example. I have a medical director at my organization currently. When I travel to another state, I'm trying to think of one now. Let's just go north into Wyoming. If I get assigned to an incident in Wyoming, because I am a part of a compact state, I have my national registry, I have my state certifications, I have a medical director attached with me, and I have protocols from that medical director. I'm able to practice in that state. On the other side of the coin, for those that may be interested in doing it in compact states, you're a little bit lucky because that opportunity is there to move across state lines. But it gets a little tricky when you move into states like California, Washington, and Oregon that are not currently part of that compact. So having that national registry will allow for I think it's an emergency declaration that allows medical providers to work in an emergent situation in that wildland industry. So I guess in a roundabout way to answer your question, having national registry is going to be the key part in order for you to move freely with ease versus just having that local, state, or county certification that may kind of keep you pinned in to only the compact states or only states with an agreement based on emergency status.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah.
So, now I know obviously you got to have your red card to do all that stuff, right?
Correct. So there's two kind of variants now. There's a lot of discussion, especially with the most recent class that I took from Scott Logan out of Wyoming. So if you don't mind, I'll give him a shout out. He's a great instructor. So if
Oh,
anyone
no, most definitely.
gets an opportunity to take a wildland or a fireline paramedic or a fireline EMT course or even a med unit leader course, Scott Logan's a great instructor who has a lot of experience in that field. But that came up in his class quite a bit, where there are uncertified EMTs and paramedics on the line. Those kind of occur in different situations. So the ideal situation obviously is someone who has a red card. So you're attending a an initial class. It's online. It's an NWCG 130 and 190, and then you attend a field day that's hosted by an agency. So going deeper into that, you can seek out those certifications a lot through state fire offices, host those for free. There are private wildland fire academies that host those for a fee as well. I know there's a handful in the Colorado area. And then a lot of local agencies will also host them as well. And they'll allow you to be rostered with them at that point because it's kind of a win-win for those organizations to have a paramedic or an EMT with a red card that is able to deploy, which I think we'll talk about here in a little bit, how the pros and cons and how that works, both for the provider and the agency that you sponsor yourself with or the contract agency you go out with. Now,
Definitely.
on the other side of the coin, you're starting to see a lot of non-red carded providers out there, and I don't want to say a lot. I think that's a misrepresentation, but there is a handful of providers that don't have their red card because it isn't necessarily required. Those folks end up working in the camps because they're not in that specific. I don't want to call it IDLH. That's a structured term, but in that smoky, dangerous, high risk environment where you have to understand fire behavior. Because when you're at camp, you're at a safe distance away. You're working with other individuals who have a lot of experience, like your incident management teams, who can read that smoke, read that fire, and say, "All right, buddy,
Yeah,
it's time to
exactly.
get in your car and it's time to go."
Yeah.
So they're starting to use those folks as well. Just because for the past, I would say, 5 to 7 years, the demand for providers on the fire line has increased, and the response from the community has been a little bit underwhelming. I've been on
Okay.
so when the fire seasons are popping off and there's multiple incidents across the nation, there have been incidents that what we use the term UTF, so unable to fill. There have been positions for medics and EMTs that have been UTF. So I know that your long-term goal with this kind of documentary and podcast is to push out information to get more people interested in things alternative to ambulance work. And I think this is
Oh
a
yeah.
really great place to cut your teeth. Really cool place
I
to
appreciate it.
learn a lot of information. So yeah, so when it comes to
Oh
working at
yeah.
Wildland, yeah, this is a really great place to be.
Awesome, man. Most definitely. So with that, so let's jump into care. Like, what's the most common illness or injury that you see out there?
Yeah. So when it comes to Wildland medical care, a lot of people think it's major trauma, right? I think those are the ones that make
No.
the news the most. I just had a friend who, shout out to the Craig Hotshots. Unfortunately, they had an incident last year that led into the fatality, and those are those snags in trees, right? Falling trees are probably that one of the bigger risks that occur out there in the wildland area because they're dropping trees in quantity for a long period of time. There's a lot of inherent danger and risk that comes with it that you'll learn in 130, 190, and a lot other fire behavior classes. But those are one of the lookouts that you're looking for. But those don't occur as often as we kind of portray it. A lot of it is going to be actually minor care and kind of doing long-term management of a patient. So looking out for those with foot ulcers is a big one.
Yeah.
So I'm always looking at foot injuries. So if you have a foot aversion, the Med-L or the EMTF or the EMPF may not be the role for you because you're going to be looking at a lot of feet on the line and helping place some moleskin, draining some things, maybe looking at different and expanding that care range, right? Um,
Yeah.
for those that just like you as a new EMPF or a new EMTF on the line. So there's also going to be a lot of new crew firefighters, engine firefighters, sawyers out there who just bought their boots in the
Oh
mail
my
two
God.
days before
Yes.
they went on a roll. So
Yeah. Don't break them out. Don't
so
break them
I
in.
can throw a side note in there. So if you have a major interest for this, while you're training for your pack test or while you're doing the pack test, I highly recommend that you get a pair of boots that you're breaking in during that period with some good wool socks. But
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
you are not lying.
yeah,
Change those socks. Change those socks.
yeah. Uh, yeah. But when it comes to the kind of frequency of care, right, we talk about that trauma hierarchy. Trauma is a big deal, right? Being good at trauma management and understanding trauma care is going to be extremely important, especially for those incidents. They're far and few in between, right? I like to call them high acuity, low frequency events. We have to be
Okay.
trained for them. We have to be competent in them. We have to be good at them, but they're not going to occur as frequently as we expect them to. The minor care is going to be what you're looking at. So again, going back to the feet, we're looking at blisters on hands. We're looking at also kind of the camp crud is what goes around quite a bit. Um,
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
lot of people do when you cut, it's a mixing pot, right? It's just like when your kids go back to school. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
that for the fire line, right? Because there's a crew from the middle of Nebraska that has never met anyone from Denver, and here I am showing
Oh
up,
my gosh.
and we exchange our germy hands, and next thing you know, I got the sniffles,
Yeah.
and the next guy over from Nebraska has a cough. So
Oh
it's
yeah.
just the way that it
Yeah.
works. And so really it's just kind of I consider a lot of the care that we do on the line remote urgent care work. We're doing a lot of triage and we're doing a lot of minor care. If I can treat it in the field and get these crews back in line and get them back to par so they can work, that's the ideal situation. Now I have to, as a good
Okay.
provider, as an EMT or a paramedic, right? We have to be able to look at a patient and go, all right, you had a blister yesterday. Now it looks like it's pussing and oozing, and you have a fever, and you can't even tell me your name. Those are those
Yeah.
times where we need to escalate and use our chain of command and maybe consider driving those folks into the clinic or requesting an ambulance, just depending on where you're at in the world. So
Okay.
that kind of brings that broad spectrum. And for those that may be specifically only looking at camp work, a lot of that your business hours are going to be early morning when the crews wake up to eat breakfast and get their assignments for the day. So from 6 to 9,
Yeah.
and then afternoon from 5 to 10 p.m. when camps lights out. You're going to be doing a lot of that minor care again, looking for chapstick and bandages, maybe peeling up some hands, wrapping up some things like that. It's a lot of that urgent
Gotcha.
minor care.
Okay. Yeah. So you got to have your intuition down. You got to have your assessment skills down and everything.
Absolutely.
Very similar to what we do offshore. You know, we see now. Do y'all carry any antibiotics with you, or is it, or do you have your standard ALS meds, or your loadout? I guess I should say.
Yeah. So you know what? I feel like the theme of this conversation will continue to be it's a changing field. You're going to find many
Oh yeah,
providers. I'm sure there's going to be a provider that's going to listen to this and say, absolutely, I do. I can tell you from my personal experience, I haven't seen or carried personally antibiotics. I know that there are advanced practice providers out there. They're actually deploying with us, or they're towing as a matter of fact, what is it? I forgot what they're calling it now through the NWCG or the Forest Service, but they're pulling up a trailer with a mid-level practitioner, a nurse, or a paramedic that can actually prescribe on site and order medications to
wow,
be delivered to camp. And obviously, those are going to be those long-term incidents, those type 1 incidents where there's a lot. But
yeah,
but it's kind of getting cool, right? Where
yeah,
before
yeah, definitely.
it would be the supply guy or the ground support guy who's going to go into Walmart and he's going to bring in a script, or he's going to
Yep.
say that guy can't poop for a couple of days. Perfect. Let me just go ahead and get him some milk and magnesium, right? And
Yeah.
go from there. So times are changing. So to kind of go back to the beginning, my personal kit, what I've been carrying, I carry two different kits. It just depends on my role on the fire line. If I am out with my REMS team, I typically carry a normal fire pack, like you would find anyone on a wildland incident have, but I have a med lid. I actually bring it up here in a little bit and show you if you guys like. I can open it up.
Oh
But
yeah, definitely. That
yeah,
would be awesome.
yeah. My kit specifically holds a handful of things. My thought process when I created, there's really no standard out there that puts it out. There are recommendations that the NWCG put out, but as you look at it, you'll find betadine and iodine. And really, I don't think any service is using betadine and iodine outside of maybe for some crike procedures or some invasive
Yeah.
procedures. But other than that, an alcohol prep is kind of our standard now. So as you can see, like most of those lists are from 2012 or 2002, so 20 to 10 years outdated. But so when I created my kit, I really thought about what I couldn't do without immediately. If I had to wait for an ambulance or another paramedic with a real kit, a larger kit around me, what can I do immediately? So immediately thought of allergic reaction, right? Allergic reactions can kill very quickly. So I brought
Yes.
Epi and I brought my Benadryl and I brought a syringe to draw it up and provide that medication. Right behind that, right, we're thinking about fluid support in that anaphylaxis situation. So I brought a 500 cc bag. It's not a lot, but everyone knows that a good 500 cc bump can buy you some time. So obviously, with that 500 cc bag and that 10 drop set, I got some IV starts. So I got a little blowout kit with tegaderms and everything else like that. You can build it out how you like with a tourniquet. So that's kind of that fluid medication realm and resuscitation. Um, Next, behind that, I started doing trauma management. So really, again, I think I'm going to continue to iterate the shocks, right? So
Oh yeah,
my
yeah, yeah.
anaphylactic shock, my traumatic shocks, my hemorrhagic shocks. So I'm looking down that pathway. So I really did a lot of bone stabilization. So I had a little SAM splint that I kind of opened up, flattened back out. I packed two for the full sole fact that I could actually make it into a C collar if it was a head injury, right?
Yeah.
You know, and if you don't know that, for those that are listening, go check out the SAM manual. It's online.
Oh
It's a
yeah.
really good way. There's a
Fantastic.
lot
I
of
love
fun
them.
stuff that you can do with the SAM splint. So, and then behind that, right, trauma shear, so I can trim that SAM splint or trim up that elastic bandage that I brought. Coban is another tool that I brought, right, for that direct pressure. And then obviously we're going to go up that hemorrhage cascade. So I have my direct pressure, so I have my gauze, my Coban that I'm going to place on there so I can do another rapid assessment and address other wounds. I brought a chest seal as well. one chest seal can get a long way, right? And then we all know that we
Oh
can
yeah.
use the wrapper if you get that. I'm not here to represent any brand specifically, but the high vent wrappers, right? The high vent
Yeah.
wrappers can also be used as
Yeah.
well. If you cut it up, you can also use a secondary or third seal if needed. And then kind of going down that, continue that cascade, right? I brought a tourniquet. I brought two tourniquets
Okay.
specifically. So that's kind of the minimum of the pack, and
So
then the
which
rest.
tourniquet do you prefer? Which tourniquet do you prefer?
The new Sam 2s.
Okay.
Sam came out with theirs. I really like theirs. It's very similar to their pelvic binders that they
Okay. Yeah.
make. So to me, it's a little bit easy because everyone's adrenaline is going to go, so they're going to pull as tight as they can, and I think that captures it very
Yep.
well without losing, right? Because realistically, if I'm pulling away and then wrapping over, with that wrap, we're still not keeping tension, so we're going to lose that tension. So if I
Yep.
have an untrained provider who's going to freak out, I'm going to tell them to tourniquet their buddy. They're going to pull as hard as they can, and guess what? It's going to lock. And then all I need to do is go
Yep.
in there and spin that winch once, maybe twice. So that's my personal
Exactly.
preference.
Okay.
I like things that are simple. I don't need to overcomplicate it. Our job our job as good providers is that we can actually do our jobs hand off. Is my belief. So we
Yeah.
have the knowledge. We have a lot of people who want to help. So let's take advantage of those people so you can stay focused on the, I guess, the whole overarching care of our patient. So I
Yeah.
choose
Definitely.
items that can be easily identified, right? So I choose colorful things like a Sam splint. I don't buy the tactical one because if I say the
Oh
black thing
God,
in
no.
there,
Yeah.
what are they going to do? They're going to hand us the shear,
Oh yeah.
right? Or they're going to hand us the pen.
Oh yeah.
So if I
Yeah.
say the orange and blue item inside my bag, they're going to be able to pull that Sam splint identified quickly. So not to say that my
Most definitely.
wetland firefighters are not intelligent by any means, not knocking on anyone out there, but in an emergency situation,
In a
we've all seen
stressful
our police
situation, yeah.
officers, right? We've seen our trained
Yep.
providers are the coolest people on our sites freak out and lose it. So we need to kind of revert back to the
Yep.
basics and remember that we're the trained medical providers. They're just hands.
Yeah. Is it, yeah, like my shears are bright green.
Awesome.
And yeah, so I mean, one, it's my favorite color, but two, it's also the bright green things in my bag. Okay.
Exactly. Yep. Yep. We want things to be easily identified, easily found. So I'm all about that.
Yep, definitely.
Yep.
All right, so you said that. All right, so that was part of it.
Yep.
And then what else do you have in there that you?
So I started carrying, then I started looking to my emergent or immediate care projects, right? So my urgent care projects, so some moleskin. I'm looking at some just basic bandaging supplies, band-aids itself. I'll kind of go around pretty quickly. And on top of that, depending on who your medical provider or the med-el group or who's kind of going to be supervising you, there's different trains of thoughts. I personally carry some electrolytes. If anyone asks, they're for me. Uh, but it's
Yeah,
okay, right? Anything, I believe that if any adult can go to the store and purchase it over the counter, you can leave it there for them based on
yeah,
their symptoms
yeah,
and
yeah.
findings, right? So a
If
mild
it just
heat.
happens to be missing from my bag, I'm not going to say anything.
Yep. So and it's funny. A friend of mine actually bought me a little Velcro patch that says the store is in the front pouch. So that way, if anyone was walking behind me, they can reach because those are all my resupplyable stuff. And honestly, you know, bless the Forest Service and bless all the agencies, the BLM, and everyone else that we support their fires. But red Gatorade gets old after a while. So I want some
Yes, yes.
supplements
Oh my
from
gosh.
different source. So I know some people carry drip drops. I personally carry LMNT. It's something that I personally use in the fire service here locally, so it's easily abundant. We have a subscription program that our house uses. But I think what else? Liquid IV is another option.
Oh
It's
God, yeah,
really
yeah.
right.
That's a
You're realistically looking for that electrolyte supplementation, and then the sugar content at that point I think is negligible because most of those guys that are there at that point they probably burn enough sugar and burn enough energy that
oh
day
my
that they could
gosh.
probably use it. So again, I'll take this time to do another pro tip for the folks that are planning to go out there. In each of your lunch bags, you will always get a candy bar or a treat of some sort. If you're watching your
Yeah.
weight, because we are going to be sedentary waiting for something to happen, we're not going to be hiking and doing too much. Save those in your bag or in a cool place. So when you run into your crew, you can hand into, when you have a crew of 20 that's hungry, starving, tired, you can hand out a bunch of Twix and Snickers bar, and I think you'll be their best friend.
Oh yeah, yeah. God, yeah. Because one of the things that I like is we've got those electrolyte popsicles.
Oh yeah,
And when it's hot on deck and everything, I have a cooler I walk around with. I just kind of hand them out to my guys that are out on the deck working,
yeah,
and they're Yeah. So yeah, no, yeah, that's awesome. Build that relationship with your guys.
It's
That's a
hearts,
big
minds,
thing.
and bodies, right? That's what we're here for.
Yeah, oh, yeah, definitely, definitely. So what is a typical fire camp setup like?
So a fire camp. So I'm going to speak kind of from the military perspective too. So a fire camp kind of looks like a forward operating base, right? So
Okay, yeah,
so if anyone's watched any sort of modern war movie, the forward operating base or the FOB is what it looks like. So it is a very rudimentary camp, just depending on the incident size. And I say rudimentary because it truly has the basic needs to get the operation going. As those events grow, you might see expanded services. I was on a fire in California and they had sleep trailers there, parked
okay,
outside for those that were maybe working night shift. So starting from the beginning, I guess, if an incident is pretty small, you might be the only paramedic or might be the only EMT there. You're going to show up, you're going to link up with most likely a medical unit leader, or you might be the head person for a couple of hours or days until that medical unit leader arrives. Um, and that camp is going to be pretty basic. There's going to be a headquarters or an ICP point, right? So that's where command staff's going to have their meetings. That's where you can find the IC or the incident commander. And then from there, every kind of branch of that ICS chain is there, right? Your documentation, your finance, your logistics, your operations, each of those tents there. And then if you remember back from ICS 100 to 200, those
oh my
branches
gosh, yeah,
expand significantly. So if you can imagine that, each tent will sit behind those kind of bigger tents, right? So,
okay,
for I guess for those visual learners out there and those visual kind of people, that 10 by 10 tent will be your operations branch management team, right? So you're going to have a couple of people, the head honchos in there, and behind those a 6 by 6 or an 8 by 8 yurt or small structure, or you're going to start sharing those 10 by 10s with each of those smaller sections. So in the operations sections, you're going to have the divisions, you're going to have the task force, right, where you're going to be kind of working beneath those levels. In the logistics section, which medical falls into currently, um,
okay,
logistics itself is a pretty big group. You have your communications, so you have your radio tent where you're going to pick up a radio, or you're going to get your radio program through our commo people. You have your food services folks, your food service groups. Um, Depending on the incident, you might find yourself eating at a restaurant, a local restaurant in town that has been subcontracted by whoever's paying for that current incident, paying to cater to X amount of people on the site. As those events grow, you might find yourself eating out of a mobile trailer. And those trailers are these massive trailers that roll up, not just like food trucks. I'm talking about massive, freight liners that are showing up with mobile kitchens inside, staffed with
nice,
some high level chefs. I've never had a more delicious meal than in California that was made out of one of those trailers. For those that were in the military, it was called a hamster, right? But we know it's chicken cordon bleu. So chicken
okay,
cordon bleu
yeah,
was made out of there, and it's probably one of the cooler meals that I had there with mashed potatoes and some greens. And then they were
awesome,
able to support us with some dessert and treats and things like that for the end of the day. So that's kind of the food unit. When it comes outside of that, the med unit leader, right? So we talked about that 10. That med unit is going to be kind of your home base. You're going to be constantly checking in there, making sure following up on patients or giving some heads up on what you're finding on the field. And that's managed by a medical unit leader who carries the bulk of the supplies for the incident, right? So not only the documentation and things like that, but they're going to be keeping a larger stock of maybe sunscreen, chapstick, um, electrolytes and things like that. So you can restock your kits from that as well, just depending
okay,
on what else. So that's a good kind of space for you. And then you're going to have porta johns everywhere. So if you have an aversion
yeah,
to pooping and peeing in porta johns, you probably Wildland might not be for you. Um,
yeah,
and if you haven't pooped in the woods yet, I suggest you try it before you go out, so that way you can run back inside your house and wash your hands. Because so
I don't
it's
mean to laugh so hard,
no, it's
but we had so I'm also a DMAT medic with
okay.
Department of Health and Human Services,
Okay.
and so for the past couple of years, most of our deployments have been COVID,
Okay.
and so they're like all of these teams are getting put up in these like 5 star, well, I would say 5 star, 4 or 5 star hotels, because nobody's there and the government's getting in there, so these guys are getting spoiled and everything. And we had a big conference back in August, and one of the first things out of the mouth was, "Guys, what's the first word in D? What does D stand for? It stands for disaster. So don't get used to this because when we start having hurricanes again, we're not getting those hotels. You're going back in those
Oh
tents.
yeah. Oh yeah. It's always a
So
shock. It's kind
yeah,
of funny when you see the brightest yellows and the brightest green pants moving in towards their first porta potty visit, and they're like, "Oh my gosh!" They come out, and sometimes it takes a little bit to get those porta johns out there too. So it might just be
yeah.
one or two. I was on an incident in Montana, and we were at an airfield, a really remote, like almost like a brush airfield, and they only had one porta john that was built there just for those brush pilots to use, so that they didn't litter
Oh
around the
wow.
field. And there was a
Yeah.
raccoon that was inside the porta john down there at the base. So you would hear scratching. If you sat down, you would hear scratching, and it felt like you were inside some sort of Saw movie because it was getting closer and closer and louder as the quieter you got as you went to the bathroom. So,
Oh my gosh.
Wildland brings on a lot of stories. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people commenting and sharing their own stories. So maybe that could be a hashtag for you. What's
Yes.
your poop story?
Oh yeah, yeah. Seriously, definitely put it in the comments if you've
Yeah.
had a funny poop story. Yeah. That. Oh my gosh, that's freaking hilarious. Just imagine sitting down, something tickling you down there. That
Yeah.
would. Yeah. So all right. So Woods, do you see a lot of do you see a lot of like poison oak, poison ivy stuff out there?
Occasionally you do, but honestly, when you're rolling out as a line firefighter, which is something else I've done as well, so that's also a pathway that a lot of folks can do as well. Maybe you're not interested in being 100% an EMT and managing patients. A lot of crews, including Forest Service, local, so I would say DFPC for the state of Colorado, love to hire EMTs and paramedics as well because they want someone on that crew to provide that immediate care, just in case I, as the line paramedic, am 30 minutes away, that EMT can get an
Yeah,
assessment done and get some immediate care done before I arrive and give me a good handoff. So for those that may not be
definitely.
interested in doing medicine and they want to just grow as a firefighter, going down the other pathway of joining a crew might be a good opportunity.
Oh
So
yeah, yeah,
so to answer your question, you're typically rolling out as a firefighter, finding yourself with a experienced member who's going to be able to help you identify that stuff. For my first couple of rolls out, yeah, absolutely. I didn't know what I was stepping in, right? So that's why we wear high
yeah.
cut boots. That's why they force us to wear high cut boots, and we're not wearing shorts out there and doing gardening. We're doing
Oh
extreme gardening,
no,
right? So
yeah,
we need that long sleeve pants.
yeah,
But it does occur occasionally, especially if it ends up burning and the wind blows in that direction. There is some irritation and things like that. So again, kind of rounding out that whole idea of immediate care. If that's something, if you're going to a region where you can imagine, right, that occurring at, like the high Rockies, maybe not, right, versus maybe down in kind of low elevation California, you might consider bringing some calamine lotion or some sort of soothing, calming lotion as well to bring with you, not even for the other person, but maybe even for yourself. So yeah, absolutely. There's
okay,
there's always inherent risk with that, right? When you go outside and play in the greens.
definitely. So which all right? So if you had to choose between going out the fire line as a medic or as a firefighter, which one would you prefer over the other,
Oh man,
or is it kind of a 50-50?
it's 100% a 50-50 for me. I'd love to do both. As a career firefighter now, like I really want to grow myself as a fireman, and as a firefighter, and I want to see fire. Right, we as structure firefighters,
Oh
we
yeah,
barely see too many fires, just depending on where you're working. I can tell you in the Denver
yeah,
metro area, we get burns every so often, but they're not as frequent as we like. So getting along that heat, right, no pack on, and doing some
yeah,
gardening, shoveling some dirt on top of that fire is something gratifying about that, right? It's instant gratification. Uh,
definitely.
but on the other side, I really do enjoy deploying as a line paramedic and as a medical unit leader. I'm able to mentor a lot of people because a lot of people, when they get out of EMT school, want a lot of work. They don't want to work in an ambulance. They will look for other options, and they end up coming out to a fire line. But they've never seen fire before. They've never worked in a team environment like that where there's multiple missions occurring simultaneously, and
Oh yeah,
you're now expected to be the star of the show when something emergent happens. So I love being
yes,
able to provide that mentorship and provide that help and kind of show how it's done. It's kind of interesting the hierarchy. I think this is a really good segue point to talk about who manages us, right? So on an incident,
yeah.
I
That
think
was
that's
actually gonna be what I was gonna.
yeah, yeah. The earlier questions, sending me those banks of questions actually helped a lot. So so think
That's
about
good. I'm glad.
so talking about management, right? So let me kind of start with who we're managed by specifically. So again, depending on who you are sent out with, so again, kind of talking about the different routes, you can be a Forest Service EMT, right? So you're hired to the Forest Service, the BLM, or other agencies, right? You can be a cooperator, meaning that you're coming from an agency. So if you're rostered with a volunteer agency or career agency like myself, you can be sent out with the title of line paramedic or EMT. And then lastly is the contractor world, right? So you are working for a contract agency. um, Try not to be any bias here. There's a lot of contract agencies out there. Just look for Wildland Fire, and then add medics or EMTs behind that, and I promise you'll find a lot. A lot of my friends are still in that business, so I would want to make sure I don't miss any of them if I were to name them all.
I completely understand.
So, with that being said, if you end up in that contractor position, your supervision overall will most likely be your home office. So someone is going to be assigned to you. You're going to be able to contact and reach them, and that's most likely for HR situations, finance, accounting, and things like that. Now on the fire line, and this goes for everyone, as an EMTF, so in line paramedic or line EMT, you will be assigned to the medical unit leader. That person is going to sign your shift tickets, which is essentially your time card, and then your emergency shift tickets or your emergency equipment, so your EERs. You're going to get those signed off by them as well. So if you're carrying a monitor, you're carrying a bag, you have a vehicle, you're going to itemize that out, and you're going to say, this piece of item was out in the line for X amount of hours. And that's kind of for, again, for the accounting and the human resources portion, right? So you have a family emergency and you need to go home. Something happens, you're able to contact that med-el, and that med-el is going to be the one that's going to help manage that. Now, as far as operations, right? So between the hours of, depending on the operational hours, between the hours of 8 and 5, let's say, you are assigned to a specific division or a branch. Again, take a look at your ICS 100 or 200 if that didn't ring a bell in your mind. But you're assigned to a division, you're assigned to a branch or a task force. Those are going to be your immediate supervisors during that period. They're going to be the ones that are going to tell you about fire conditions. They're going to be telling you about the staff that's going to be in that area, the staff that's assigned to you specifically, right? So they're going to put you in a strategic location that's going to obviously be out of harm's way. Potentially, you could be in harm's way, right? But next to maybe a hotshot crew that's dropping a lot of trees. They want you right there, so that way, if something happens, you can provide that immediate care. Other times, you might be sitting on top of a hill, so you can go right, left, or straight, depending on what engine company or what crew you're going to be headed towards. So there's going to be a lot of options, but that supervisor is going to give you the best information. And so for those that are going to be interested in working this field, those are the people that you really want to get to know and tap their brains. Most of those folks have, I would say, probably to get to the point of a task force leader or division, you have to have 5 to 7+ years on the job on the fire line to earn those books. And that's going fast.
Nice.
So those
Oh
people are going
yeah.
to teach you how to read smoke. They're going to tell you what their expectations are. They're going to tell you how to leave. And honestly, the best kept secret, those folks know where the best cell service is. So
Oh yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
can only imagine.
So building good relationships with them and introducing yourself every morning, saying, "Hey, you know what? My name's Neil Meesh. I'm your paramedic. I'm assigned to your division today. What would you like to see from me? Where would you like me to be?" Those are those conversations I should start out with, and I think that goes with the professionalism that we expect from a provider online.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Yeah. So, oh Lord, I just had a brain fart. Okay, so your equipment. Is it something that's provided to you, or is it something that you have to, as far as like your basic, your FRs, your bag, is that like all stuff that you went out and purchased yourself, or is that stuff that's provided by your company, or how does that work out?
That's a great question. The answer again is going to be it depends. So very similar to
I
just
love
kind
that
of that
answer.
that conversation of kind of who manages you. The contractor world is going to be a little bit different. Most contract agencies should be providing you with equipment, and I'm gonna hold my contract agencies accountable. I'm gonna ask them. I'm gonna tell them right now, if they're listening to this. If you're gonna send out a line EMT or a line paramedic, please send your line EMTs and paramedics with the proper gear and information of what they need. So make sure that they have that fire rated boot, that fire line boot, because the last thing we need is a EMT or a paramedic whose boot breaks down and they're unable to get to that call or to get to that hurt person. That's the scariest thing that could ever happen. But as an expectation too, as an employee, I would expect through a contract agency, I'm being outfitted with the right equipment before showing up in an incident. Now on the so that as a contractor, the equipment should be provided to you through your contract agency. Should be is the key word, and I would emphasize for those listening to expect it, and ask for it if you're not getting it. And I'll leave it there. I'll let you. And on the other side of that coin, there, if you're an agency person, or you're a cooperator, right? So you're coming from a fire department, or you're coming from one of the internal agencies. Um, honestly, very honestly, you can show up pretty much with nothing, with a t-shirt and pants and a backpack, and everything should be able to be provided to you through supply units. Now, again, the it depends part keeps growing, right? So if the
Yeah,
incident
yeah.
is fairly new, so you're going to a type 3 incident, right, which is the smallest type of incident, you might not have supplies readily available yet. That semi could be coming from Missoula, or it could be coming from Fort
Okay.
Collins, right? So that cash is going to be there. So you should always be prepared to have it. Your home agency most likely has a cache of it. It might be used, it might be dirty, but honestly, you're there to do a used and dirty job. So don't worry
Oh
about how
yeah,
you look.
yeah.
You'll find that you'll see there's a lot of experienced guys, right? Just like I think in your industry, the guys with the dirtiest shirts, the dirtiest boots, dirtiest jeans are the guys that have
Oh
been
my
out there for
gosh.
years. Uh, so
Yes,
it's not a
yes.
fashion competition by any means. So just take what you can. But in a realistic world, right? So if I'm coming today and I just got assigned to type 1 incident that's been established for a couple weeks, and I'm going to go fill in and trade in for someone, I think that I would be able to go to supply and grab some yellows and greens, provided I have my own boots as well. That includes a tool as well, right? So my tool myself, a lot of people will scoff, but I really, really enjoy the McLeod,
Okay.
right?
All right.
And the Rogue. So I like the Rogue and the McLeod. I love the McLeod. I just grew up with it. That was my role when I was doing crew work. But
Go with what you know.
yeah, exactly. So, but having a tool, and then that kit should also be provided through your agency as well. At the minimum, should be a fire line pack. So if you're or excuse me, a fire shelter, at the minimum, that is the lowest common denominator. You shouldn't be driving out from ICP onto the fire line without that pack. So, and that's your
Okay.
deployable silver, right? No, the baked potato kits. All right, for those of you that are
Yep.
visual,
Yep.
right? So
Yeah.
that's the bare minimum to get out there. Um, but that again, that should be provided through your contractor agency. That should be provided through your home agency. Again, and if not, if you are agency or you are a cooperator, and you forget it, you lose it, it gets destroyed on the flight over, you should be able to pick it up through um, supply.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Cool. So I'm guessing y'all probably sleep in tents while you're out there, or
You
do you
know,
have nice sleeping trailers with air conditioning in it? Maybe.
uh, so the common theme is and of the answer is going to be it depends, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
We've already established that.
yeah, so yeah, just expect that for the rest. Yeah, honestly, it just again, kind of going through the incident rankings, right? If you are arriving on an incident that's brand new, most likely, there's probably not going to be any shelter for you. If you're lucky enough, you might end up near a Boy Scout camp. They might be able to put you inside. Someone deems that it's safe enough to go inside. I've been fortunate enough to stay in a cabin like that on an initial attack. Super cool. It's super great. Um, that's a great assignment to have. But I always bring my tent. I have a little 2-person kind of REI tent that I pack. I have a sleeping pad. I have a sleeping bag with some other additional insulation. If you're a cold sleeper, you get cold when you sleep. You should probably bring additional like insulation that you can stuff in that sleeping bag. I bring a little pillow, a little blow up pillow. It's almost like I'm backpacking, to be honest. So if you look at a
Oh
backpacker's
yeah.
kit,
Yeah.
I even bring a jet boil for myself. Sometimes
Nice.
eating lukewarm oatmeal for the 6th day in a row doesn't do you good. So I'll pack
And
a
you got to have your coffee too, right?
Yep. So I'll sometimes I'll make a French press. I'll boil some hot water, and I'll make myself my own little cup of noodles, or I'll pack a Mountain House meal every so often to treat myself. Usually that's my 7 day
Oh
mark
yeah.
to give me some motivation to remind myself that there is real food out there.
Oh yeah.
And then
Definitely.
make a cup of coffee after that. So really, if anyone's looking for like how to pack for an incident, I would kind of look at a backpackers, right? If you're going for a probably a 7 day trip, backpacking trip, that's how I would initially start looking. And then from there, as you realize how heavy that kit is and that you don't need to carry this or you never use this on this deployment, just get rid of it. It's always better
Oh
to
yeah.
be over prepared than under prepared. But yeah,
Yep.
so that is best case scenario, right? Sleeping in that cabin, but we do sleep in tents. And then there are other opportunities depending on weather, depending on environment, depending on location. Some people have the fortunate ability to stay in hotels. For those that work the Cameron Peak Fire, they're probably nodding their head right now. There was an incident that occurred here in Colorado not too long ago. It dropped snow, and so all of a sudden the incident had to house everyone inside hotels because it was getting way too cold outside. And all of a sudden, these local hotels that were packing skiers and everything else like that, and mountain bike tourists, all of a sudden were overrun by guys, guys with beards and yellow jackets and massive,
Yep.
big dirty pants. And so and it was crew to a room. So you might get that fortunate ability. So really just depends, And if you get to stay in a hotel, send me a postcard. Let me know where you ended up because you're lucky.
Yeah, nice,
Yeah.
nice. So what's the so yeah, that's pretty much the stereotype of the of fire line, big guys, beards, and then your I know that there's been a big surge in the female firefighters too coming out there and everything, but usually it's the big built people, and then you have the good natured of it. I've heard that the community is very small and very tight knit, and it's a little bit different than the brotherhood you normally get in fire and EMS. I mean, it's its own brotherhood, but I've heard that it's a little bit tighter. Is
Absolutely.
that right?
Yep. This industry is full of people who have passion for their job. They do a really hard job for little pay and little benefit. So if I have any influence in anything that they do, a lot of the best people I met, some of my best friends, I'm going to give a shout out to one of my good friends, Wilson Lewis, right, who's part of the Craig Hotshots. Um, he does a lot of hard work every day for little pay, no off-season benefit. And so with that being said, these folks are being paid in sunsets, right? At the end of the day, they're watching these beautiful sunsets in these very remote places, and it's almost like I would say almost like a joke to hear that, right? To be able to sit up there, but they do a great job doing the best that they can with what they have. And so, with that being said, anyone who's grown up poor, anyone who's grown up with any sort of adversity knows that those communities of victims are very tight. So very similar. The
Yes.
fire forest
Okay.
service is very tight. So again, if reiterating that whole idea of being respectful, right, when you approach your division, that goes with anyone on the
Yes.
fire line. Introduce
Oh
yourself,
yeah.
absolutely, right? I'd introduce myself to Hotshot Crew and say, hey, you know what? My name's Neil. I'm going to be your paramedic. I'm going to be in this area today. I'll stay out of your way unless you'd like me to, linger close. Let me know what you guys need. And that's all they want to hear, right? They want to hear that you're there to work with them or for them, because they're the subject matter experts at that point. We are
Oh
not.
yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
I think there's a hard transition with EMS providers who have maybe worked on an ambulance for a while. We're used to being the stars of the show because when we show up for an overdose, it's no longer PD's scene, and in some places,
Oh yeah.
fire doesn't have any medical control, so it's our show. And so when we walk into a lot of rooms, in a lot of places, we have a I guess, a large ego or a sense of authority amongst
Yeah.
ourselves.
All eyes are on us,
Yep, all
and
eyes are on us.
we're
But
the
in the fire service or in the wildland fire realm, we are the last people, right? No one actually truly wants to see us ever because that means either
yeah.
they're going home, they're sick, they're injured, they're hurt. So don't be offended by that. That's a good thing that they're staying away from you. And then the other half of that too is just, it's not our world. We're still learning. Medical providers in the wildland industry are still fairly new. I know you said you wanted to join, 10 odd years ago. But since then, there's been so much progression, so much expectation out of us to perform. So there's a desire, there's a sense of professionalism, quiet professionalism that we need to maintain to make sure that we continue to go on these incidents and continue to support our brothers and sisters that are doing that dirty and hard work for us.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
So would you consider something like a what is it, a WAMP, a wilderness upgrade for the medical professional, or a advanced wilderness life support? How would you, or do you have any experience with that, or would you like to see that integrated into training, or?
I think there is definitely some value in it. The remote medicine is really good. Is getting a lot better. Especially the curriculum that's being put out. It's no longer, hey, cut down a branch, tie the guy's leg to the branch, and then wait for more
Yeah,
help, right?
right. Yeah.
The advanced wilderness medical life providers are starting to be taken by physicians and nurses, right, who work in remote communities that maybe not be able to get that access, or there's critical access areas that may not be able to get resources very quickly. So there is definitely value in that. That's growing specifically. I guess I would put it under the caveat that if you are an inexperienced provider, this is your first season out, you haven't done anything but metropolitan EMS, absolutely go check it out. Understand what you're getting into. Sometimes a helicopter is unavailable to fly. We can't just call a helicopter on the fly anymore. Smoke conditions, wind conditions, especially dictated by a fire, may not allow us to land a helicopter, or there may not be an operator available to hoist us, right? So we might be having to hunker down for another 12 hours to get a couple of trees cut down, a dozer to push everything out of the way, and they get an ambulance up in that site. Uh, you want to be overly prepared and never have to deliver that care. So I will always
Yes.
recommend to
Yes.
anyone to take those courses, learn as much as they can, network in those courses as well, because you never know what you're going to find.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you never know what your instructors has done. So listen to their stories. I know it sounds like a lot of war stories and it gets old, especially when you're working EMS, right? Because we've heard everyone's first core or first cardiac arrest call
Oh
over and
yeah.
over and over
Yeah.
again, and the same theme. It's like I
Yeah.
had no idea, and I yard sailed everything. Same idea
Yeah.
though, but
Exactly.
yep. And once you go to the wilderness, those wilderness courses, and start seeing that value, or you start hearing those stories over and over again, maybe you maxed out on that. So I highly recommend that. And for the experience provider, I that may be listening to this and asking about these curious about these courses, I would genuinely have you guys maybe challenge yourself to say, you know what, if I had a long bone injury in this remote area, look at your resources. Who's going to come? Who's not going to come? Am I going to carry this guy out? I don't carry enough narcs in my narc kit to medicate this dude, carry him out through a bumpy road or take him down this bumpy lane. What am I going to do? Do I have to focus on good BLS care? Can I use reduction protocols? Should I ask my medical director about that? So question everything, ask those questions, take those classes, continue to grow yourself. Again, the expectation from my good friend Wilson Lewis, who's on a shot crew, if I'm going to take care of one of his buddies, he knows I'm going to give it my all. So if I knew that I skipped a class because I wanted to go snowboarding,
Yeah.
and that class provided some valuable information that could have helped that person, be kicking myself, and I think he'd be kicking the crap out of me. So take
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I completely
So I
understand.
completely encourage that. 100% encourage people to take as many classes, and because there is value. It may not be specific, right? Because you might share that class with a ski patroller, you might share it with a wildland or a SAR, search and rescue technician, maybe from the mountains.
Yep.
But that's a good place to exchange information, because those ski patrollers see a lot of long bone injuries more than most metropolitan folks do. So hear what they have to
Awesome.
say, right? So yeah,
Most definitely. So, do you want to take a minute to show us your pack, or?
yeah, I can. Yeah,
Uh,
let me run downstairs and see if I can find it. Should be
okay.
pretty close by. All right.
All right.
So Mystery Ranch Medlid. This is
Nice. Nice.
Mystery Ranch kit. This attaches to most of their packs here, so they have a couple of clip points there for you. Feel like I'm in Showtell. This is
Hey, it's always the best part, right?
yep. So this blowout kit specifically attaches to the kit. So this is when I'm hiking out, when I'm attached to a crew, or if I'm leaving my vehicle. I'm going to carry my big pack out, which is kind of another big deal. But here we go. Let's see. So here's that burn sheet here, right? Double up as a trauma sheet, right? So sterile kind of dressing there. That's kind of up front. Let me put it back there. And as you kind of open it up, it's kind of a really great modulation kind of kit here. So as I open it up, it opens up pretty simply.
Oh wow.
Just try to show everyone there. So obviously I need to update this
Yeah.
just a little bit. There's some stuff that I pulled out from the off season. This sits in my car
No. Yeah.
normally in the off season, just in case we go up skiing or something like that. Um,
Yeah.
Able to help out whenever we can, especially when we go to those remote areas. So there's that saline bag right there, 10 drop kit. I have my medications, my IV medications right down there. My shears up top, tape, right? So easily identifiable stuff. Tape's kind of hooked up in there, won't roll away on a hill. I have my shears in another
Nice.
holster there. We have, let's see, opening this up a little bit further here. There's my SAM splint, right, that we kind of discussed. I kind of
Yeah.
labeled these, right? So trauma, so that's able to be blown out. There's a tourniquet right up top there, big orange one, right? So I can say the orange tourniquet.
Nice. Yes.
Blue Coban, right? And then there's some sterile gauze, sharps container, additional trauma equipment right over here. We can kind of go through that if you'd like. It's just some, let's see, I have some quick clot in there, right? The wound
Okay.
packing. I have just basic Curlix roll right there. And additional IV medications right here as well. So this is my IV start kits. This is kind of sealed already. I ended up back sealing
Okay.
this a couple last year. So this year, before I
Hmm.
go out again, get deployed, I'll go through this again and update it, check expiration dates and things like that. So for those experienced professionals listening, go check your gear.
Oh yeah, definitely,
Yeah,
definitely. Always check your gear.
yeah. So,
So
but yeah,
that's really neat. I like that.
Yeah, so the modulation is pretty cool. There's a couple other organizations out there that do a pretty good job with their kits as well. I'm not paid by any of these folks. Stat Pack makes a pretty good one as well. It's pretty bright.
Yeah.
Although their downside is that they don't attach to any sort of pack that we carry on the fire line.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the downside of that. But if you're going to be an EMT assigned to a vehicle or a UTV and you're going to be pretty much fixed that vehicle or you're going to be fixed at a camp, that might be a good option for you as well. But typically your kits that you're bringing from home is going to be attached to you. Most wildland providers or EMTFs or EMPFs are going to be either assigned a vehicle or they're going to take their home agency vehicle that they know anyways, and they're just going to stay
Okay.
close. Sometimes you're going to have to hike that in, but that's going to be something that you're going to have to work with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. So I got two more
Yeah,
questions for you.
absolutely.
Okay, so the first one is what's the most difficult thing about your deployment? Not necessarily not the most difficult call, but just most difficult thing about your deployments out in the fire. Like
Yeah. Um, when going out on a fire on an incident itself, I think the hardest thing is just being uncomfortable. You're not going to be sleeping in your comfy bed for 14 days at the minimum, right? If you're lucky enough, that incident might wrap up in 7 days and you're going to be home. But being uncomfortable is going to be extremely important because you are going to be working with people you've never seen before. They might talk a little bit differently than you, right? I worked with a Southern Area Incident
yeah.
Management team, right? So I had a bunch of guys from Tennessee, Georgia, and I learned a lot of Southernisms over there, right? What
Yeah.
It's so funny. My When I came back from that, I spent 2 deployments with the Southern Area Incident Red Team, and I learned a lot of Southernisms to the point where my girlfriend for Christmas bought me a little Southernisms book. So when I got back with them, and the amount of sweet tea I was ingesting, the amount of chew that I was chewing on, like it was insane. So but that's after time, right? But it's uncomfortable when you show
Oh
up
yeah.
and you're the stranger, and someone else is a stranger, and you have to ask them like, "Hey, I don't know what I'm doing," or "Can you tell me where supply is?" And then on the other side of that, you're going to be sitting by yourself sometimes. If you're fortunate or unfortunate, depending on who you are, you might be sitting on the fire line in a remote location that has great service or no service at all, but you're working by yourself. You're just waiting for that radio call. And sometimes you might doze off and you wake up all of a sudden, you're like, oh crap, did I miss the radio call? So you're constantly uncomfortable because everyone knows sleeping in a truck, a pickup truck, an SUV is not that great. Sleeping on the hard ground, especially when the wind picks up, is going to be uncomfortable. Sometimes on an incident, temperatures can drop to below, to 10 degrees, and that's not going to be great for you. Going to poop in that porta potty, right, for the first time, or going to poop in the woods because all of a sudden, breakfast didn't sit well with you. So you're constantly uncomfortable. So I think that's the toughest thing to be a fireline medic or fireline EMT or work in the medical kind of side of things. I think those are the same comforts that a lot of people on the fire side experience as well. So you're not alone. And then you're going to find that people come up with a lot of solutions to those problems and that uncomfortability. And then the next time you go out, it's going to be better because you saw that guy carry baby wipes and a fanny pack. And you're like, that looks silly.
Yes.
But all of a
Yes.
sudden, there's a guy carrying a fanny pack and he goes in the porta potty. And you know what? He comes out happy because he had his baby
Oh
wipes
yeah.
with him. So everyone has a different solution to everything. But, getting uncomfortable, or excuse me, being comfortable with being uncomfortable is going to be important there. And it's going to solve a lot of your problems.
I got you.
Yeah.
All right. So my last question
Yeah.
before I let you go.
Yeah.
What if you could give one piece of advice to somebody that is wanting to get into this? What would it be?
Oh, man. I'd always remember that there's a saying out there's a lot of people that work from volunteer agencies and what people are starting to call professional agencies, right?
Yeah.
But what someone taught me recently was that everyone can be a professional. The difference is that you're a volunteer, you're a contractor, or you're a career firefighter or paramedic or EMT. So hold that dear to your heart. Not Don't expect just because or for those of you that may work in a professional environment or career environment, right? I take that back. I should rescind that statement. If you work in a career environment, when the volley shows up or when that new EMT contract EMT shows up, they may not be in the level that you are, but they still have the right to be professional, and they will be. And that's my expectation of them. And on the converse side, right, for my volunteers and for my contractors who may be working with career agencies, those folks may have a really great gig and they may have a lot of time online, but my expectation of them and my brothers and sisters that I work with currently is that they are professional with you. So maintain that professionalism. That is the one standard that we all share across the line, paid, unpaid, contract time or not. So just remember that, keep that close to your heart, and in everything that you do, like my good lieutenant would say, if it's not LCK, it's wrong. So it's not loving, caring, or kind, it's wrong. So just keep that in
That's
mind. So be
fantastic advice.
professional and be loving, caring, kind.
I love it. That's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.